So I'd like to introduce Rhoda Donko. And Rhoda is, as I said, a friend of ours. Rhoda made a short stop at the Department of Health and met a number of us there, and we immediately became friends. And then we all took off in different ways from the Department of Health. But Rhoda has been really helpful for this program in writing the enabling legislation. And she sits and works with the Senate Health and Long-Term Care Committee, which is very interested in this work and in other much larger work throughout the system in health and health care. So we asked Rhoda to give some remarks today and ask allow you to interact with her around what is what's the legislature thinking now, because they impact us a lot. So Rhoda.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate being here. I do have to say that I'm here and I'm thinking about all of your work and how what you do isn't your core job, it's your extra job. And I'm really humbled by that, because what I do, I'm doing a little bit of what you're doing in terms of making the translation of this process of introducing prevention and culture change into your work. It's a slow and difficult process. So I'm going to back up for a second and say that what I do with the legislature relates directly to writing legislation and creating budget line items to pay for health care. I mean, basically that's what we do. Our committee is all about insurance. It's probably 70% of what the Senate Health and Long-Term Care does. We create policy, we write legislation that affects the way health care is delivered across the state. Prevention is this odd thing that came along a few years ago in the form of nice programs that seemed like they would work if anybody believed in them. And culture change, okay, next. So when I went to the I'd been at the Senate for about 10 years before I took a short leave to go into sort of the public health world at Department of Health. And I learned about this business of culture change, and it was, for me too, how do you move the dial in anybody's life? How do you move the dial personally, and what about collectively? But because we became friends, and we talked about what was going on around the country, what this meant, it started to sink in with me. I went back to the legislature and with a little bit of a mission, just a little bit of a mission. And I guess my mission was not that different from yours, which is to start developing language around this idea of changing how people live their lives. And what's it to you? What's it to you, manager? What's it to you, coworker? What's it to you, director? When I first got back, my new boss was Senator Karen Kaiser, and she has a very, very, very short attention span. My job for her, as she's the chair of the healthcare committee, she comes to me to, she has ideas because people come to her all the time and do this and write that. And I maybe 20% of the time I say, let's try something like this. And I felt like part of my little mission was to bring this idea of worksite wellness into her realm a little bit. And the first hit was, nice idea, next. And then I'm not totally sure. I've been trying to figure out what caused her to start rethinking it a little bit. I'm not completely sure I know. Do you?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure, because you never really know when somebody makes the sort of switch. But it seemed reasonable to her that if you put some energy into having a healthier workforce, that it would pay dividends. Not necessarily in terms of words like presenteeism, which still doesn't mean anything to most people. Is that how you say it? Yeah. Makes total sense, because everybody knows exactly what it means, but the word itself. But because it was obvious to her that the state is an enormous payer of health care. And for that reason alone, how are we going to be able to manage our costs? One of the ways we might be able to do it is if people are not as sick, or if they are as sick, they are managing their illnesses over a long period of time way, way better. That, I believe, was what, and I think probably her own personal story, her own personal life, which is, you know, always a huge part of anybody's change. So, I don't know exactly, I can't remember, because we deal in hundreds of bills. But there was a time when we sat around a table and I brought up this idea of what do you want to do about this idea of worksite wellness. It could have an impact on the cost of employee health care, and it resonated. Okay, let's just do a pilot. Let's just do something, let's just, you know, and you all probably have had some interaction with legislators, and that's kind of the way they are. It's like, okay, let's just do something. Anyway, so the idea of a pilot came along, and it was in its own legislation, and yes, I did write it with some direct words from those of you who do the work. And basically, what happened is, like so many bills, the bill itself died, but the language was captured in a much, much bigger bill that had all sorts of elements of changing the way the healthcare system is delivered. So it was a very big bill, a 70-page bill, and there was a piece of that bill that was your project. And your project managed to pass through on that big train and then get funded in the budget because she remained interested in having somebody take this on. And I think that, again, over the course of your work, what's going to change and what's going to keep this whole thing going for the next however long you do it will be your personal translation of how you're making it happen. Because you are creating the language yourselves. No one is, you know, while you have the words and you have the guidelines and you have manuals and videos, it's still going to be your experience in your own culture that will bring new stories and new language to the whole thing. And as you do that, so will you need to make that translation to whoever is going to be paying the bills for this. So, and I honestly, I see the translation well done, and I see it fall away. I've seen the governor react excitedly about a prevention program and then say, but you got 2 years and not cutting it. And you think, oh, what? So I think it's like anything else. It's like anything in public health, that it will slowly diminish. I mean, enthusiasm needs to sort of build from those of you who are doing it and can bring us the stories, because you're creating the opportunity as you work. And I really do appreciate how it is more than your work. I mean, you're doing your work and you're doing this on top of it, and you're met with all of the sort of what that I was met with. And then when you see it pick up and you see people taking on their own responsibility for their own lives, and et cetera, it does resonate with people if you're able to communicate it. So I don't know about future funding. I honestly don't. I don't know any more than I know anything else. Every legislative session is a brand new game, and the things that happen are partly surprising, which makes it kind of addictive. But I think that the work you're doing will translate hugely if you remember that you are breaking new ground, and every time you meet with any success, it's well worth documenting and moving to the next level, which we don't know what that is.